Got it. All right, for the recording. Welcome back. We are Nagarjuna Investigators. This is March 13, 2024. Let's gather our minds here as we usually do. Please bring your attention to your breath until you hear from me again. Now bring to mind that being who for you is a manifestation of ultimate love, ultimate compassion, ultimate wisdom. And see them there with you just by way of your thinking of them. They are gazing at you with their unconditional love for you. Smiling at you with their holy great compassion. Their wisdom radiates from them, encompassing you in its light. And then we hear them say, bring to mind someone you know who's hurting in some way. Feel how much you would like to be able to help them. And recognize how the worldly ways we try fall short. How wonderful it will be when we can also help in some deep and ultimate way, a way through which they will go on to stop their distress forever. We're learning how that could be possible. And so I invite you to grow that wish into a longing. And the longing into an intention. And maybe that intention even into a determination. And turn your mind back to that precious holy being. We know that they know what we need to know. what we need to learn yet, what we need to do yet, to become one who can help this other in this deep and ultimate way. And so we ask them, please teach us that. And they are so happy that we've asked. Of course, they agree. Our gratitude arises. We want to offer them something exquisite. And so we think of the perfect world they are teaching us how to create. We imagine we can hold it in our hands, and we offer it to them, following it with our promise to practice what they teach us, using our refuge prayer. Here is the great earth, filled with fragrant incense and covered with a blanket of flowers. The great mountain, 4 lands, wearing the jewel of the sun and the moon. In my mind, I make them the paradise of El Buddha and offer it all to you. By this deed, may every living being experience the pure world. Idam Guru Ratna Mandala Kamnirya Tayami. I go for refuge until I am enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the highest community. Through the merit that we do in this investigation and the rest, may we reach Buddhahood for the sake of every living being. I go for refuge until I am enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the highest community. Through the merit that we do in this investigation and the rest, may we reach Buddhahood for the sake of every living being. I go for refuge until I am enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the highest community. Through the merit that we do in sharing this investigation and the rest, may all beings reach their total awakening for the benefit of every other. Okay. Did we have a quiz? No quiz. We had a task though, didn't we? Huh. Anybody remember what the task was?
No, we wanted to decide how to go on, but I think it was decided since we had this wonderful document from Roxana.
Yeah. All right, then we'll do a pop quiz. You remember chapter 8? Chapter 8 was doers and deeds. Doers and deeds have no natures, says Arya Nagarjuna. Which if you're the doer of a deed and somebody comes, like you're out there weeding your yard on a hot day and there's lots of weeds yet to do and you're already tired, and the neighbor comes up and says, you know, you and those weeds, you have no nature of your own. You have no nature. There's no nature. You know, my reaction would be what? Great. I don't need to weed this yard. I'm out of here. But then if I stop to think about it, I'd go, wait a minute, that can't be true. Because here I am, right? There are the weeds. If I don't pull the weeds, my neighborhood's going to give me a do you can do better letter. I've got to pull the weeds. So do we agree? I mean, intellectually, we get it. But in your heart, when you hear, there's no doers, there's no deeds, what's the reaction?
All just fantasy.
What, it's all just fantasy?
Yeah, my reaction, the first thought I had is always like, so it doesn't exist at all.
Right.
But there's deeds, and I see this guy, so there must be something.
Right. so you really can't fall completely often into the cliff of nihilism it for real without yourself jumping off the cliff, right? And here we are. So kind of thank goodness about that. Yes, Roxana.
Thank you, dear Lama. Good morning, everybody. Well, I guess that it all depends to whom we say that, right? Because
Sure.
if somebody would come over and would say to me, okay, there's no real you, I probably would thought, well, yeah, which one of the real me is doing the cutting of the weeds, right?
Right.
And where do they touch? Where does the how do you call it when you're sowing when you're cutting up the grass, the machine?
Yeah.
Where
Right.
do they touch? I mean, where does my door senses go when I pull it, when I see it, when
Right.
I don't know, like for me, it would be like asking so many questions in my mind that probably I would say, yeah, you're right, guy. There is no real me.
That's right.
Where's the
And
real
so,
you saying that?
right.
Yeah,
And so I'll continue to pull weeds, right?
right. So probably, I don't know. I wouldn't get scared of the question, to be honest. I would be interested to go on with the conversation and
Good.
like, where's the real you telling me that? I mean, I would go, what scene did it ripen for you to say that to me? I don't know.
Good.
I think it would be challenging and interesting, but it's a nice question, Yurlama, for us to think about because it applies in so many aspects of our life.
Right. And so in Arya Nagarjuna's text, when he's talking to Mr. Kachik, meaning our own ignorance, and our own ignorance hears doers' deeds have no natures. What was our reaction? What was our response? What was chapter 9 is what I'm asking. What came next?
Who has been before, like me now? What was there before? What me?
Right. If doers have no natures, and I'm the doer now, what was I before? What came before? Really, it comes out of doers and deeds. They have no nature, but everybody knows that karma propels me from deed to deed, life to life. So if deeds have no natures and me has no natures, then how can karma work? Right? If we're thinking of a me that has this thing called karma, this pool of seeds, there has to be a me that my karma works on, right? And there has to be a me that karma propels from life to life. Not a self-existent me. No Buddhist school says that, but some essential me-ness in this thing, the five heaps. And we really do hold to that. Even as we say, no, I understand, I'm nothing but my karma, we're still holding a me that has that karma. We haven't likely gained this shift of identity that Arya Nagarjuna is hoping we can get a glimpse of. Not that our me does not exist, but the way that it exists is very different than how ordinary beings hold to their identity. So chapter 9 was who was there before? And what was the conclusion of chapter 9? No nature of that either. right? Whatever is there, it can't be a there before. But there can't not be a there before either. How can you both have a not and a there at the same time? And so we were talking about the cake baker baking the cake. There's me that's not baking the cake, me not cake baker. Then me baking the cake until the cake is done. And then by the time the cake is done, I'm again me not cake baker. And we get that the me being the cake baker is this nebulous happening, only independence upon the activity of the cake baking. And that's actually not there until the cake is done, until we have a cake. And then once the cake is done, then the cake baker is gone. And at the same time, I'm holding to this me, this self, that's still the same me. I feel like I'm the same me, not a cake baker, and the same me when I am a cake baker, and the same me, right? How can I be the same me and be, right, changing? Right, we're like got this confused state of mind that I'm the same me and I'm different every moment. And we're okay with that. And our Nagarjuna says, it's great to be okay with that if we really understand what's going on. Because in fact, that gives us a glimpse of this wisdom he's hoping we can gain. That we will always be this subject, I will always be this subject side, but this subject side is never the same 2 moments in a row. And it's like, how can that be? We want a real one there, don't we? So he's giving us all these different ways through different analogies to get this grasp of how this subject object interaction relationship is happening. And that's reality. That's what we are, in fact. And when we catch even glimpses of that, we see how it is the case that our interactions with those experiences is creating future presence, of course. So he's using all these different approaches to help us get these glimpses without directly, sitting us down and say, look, this is how it is. He's addressing all of our, but, right? I follow your logic. I get your conclusion, but deep down inside, I don't buy it. Right? Yes, Roxana.
Thank you, Jirla. Sorry. Just a while ago, you were talking about karma. So what came to my mind is imprints. We're imprinting, right? So if I were to think of the terms that you are describing right now is no-nature me imprinting caking. Could it be? Because the seeds are ripening. They're imprints that are ripening. Right. So I'm ripening caking because each one of them, it's a process, it's an action, or it's a thought, it's whatever, it's it's coming through. So
Right.
it's a process of doing, making, caking.
Right.
So all
right.
of them are joining together to have a result.
Right, right. And our very long language says, I am ripening, baking. And
Right.
when we hear that, that separates that there is an I, right? That my karmic seed is making me do something. And
Right.
Arya Nagarjuna would say, we're misunderstanding something there. Because very language is implying that the I had to be there first.
Right.
And then karma can ripen me doing something else.
Right.
And that's where chapter 7 or chapter 10 actually goes. Because we're saying, okay, I understand things happen in dependence, but it's a one-way dependence, right? Me is here first. I still insist that me is here first. And then things happen and I react. And yes, I change with every reaction, but it's still the same me. And I have to be there first. I have to be there first, not cake baker, in order to be the cake baker that bakes the cake. I had to be there first. So Arya Nagarjuna, it's a one-way relationship. We agree, it's all independence. But Nagarjuna is saying mutual dependence. And if it's true mutual dependence, then me not cake baker, me cake baking, cake baked, all three have to arise at the same time. That can't be Arya Nagarjuna. There's not a cake, and then there's a cake. It's not happening all at the same time. It's happening sequentially. And when things are sequential, there has to be one that comes first, and then the next, and then the next, and then the next, right? It's like, come on, that's how we experience things. That's going to be chapter 10. Yes, Kong Li.
Thank you, teacher. Okay, put it this way. If let's say me is not the first one, then karma project me out to do the things, and then depends what is my reactions, then I'll produce the next karma.
Yes. Work on re-explaining and re-explaining and re-explaining, because that's how we get these glimpses of, like, I lose a language. I want to say truth, but that's not completely correct, right? Either. That we'll get closer and closer to understanding. So in response to chapter 9, Mr. Kachik says, all right, our Nagarjuna, we understand relationships, dependent relationships, but come on, it's like fire and it's fuel. I actually don't think Mr. Kachik says this. I think Arya Nagarjuna, I think Mr. Kachik goes, I can agree that even me is mutually dependent on the object and the interaction between. I went through chapter 9, I followed it. I said yes, 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 but when you get your conclusion, I still say no. Because I'm thinking it's one-way relationship of dependence. And so Arya Nagarjuna, rather than saying, well, let's really look at the subject object interaction. He says, let's look at something that we believe is a one-way relationship and investigate that. With the implication being apply that to our own subject side, subject being there first before something can happen. So he said they both are agreeing, let's investigate fire and its fuel. Mr. Kachik is using it to prove their point that our one who comes before can't have no nature. And Arya Nagarjuna is going to show that that example, fire and its fuel, in fact, prove his point that the subject's side must also be mutually dependently arising, experience by experience. So let's think about it. We are investigators. Before we even look at his chapter 10, let's see if we can work it out ourselves. And then we'll go back and we'll look at chapter 10 and see how well we do. Shall we? Okay, so I forgot to do our intro. Let's read our intro so we're on Arya Nagarjuna's same page. You'd think I could recite this by heart by now, but I can't. Maybe Elsie can. Oops. Why is this so difficult? Well, good enough here. Elsie, you're at the top of my page. We'll just start with the language of Tibet, shall we?
Thank you, Lama. In the language of Tibet, it is known as Uma Sewe Shiklu Chepashura. In English, we call it wisdom, a song on the route of the middle way. Bow down to Manjushri, the glorious gentle voice in his guise as a teenage boy.
And Komali 1.1, please.
I bow down to that highest of teachers, to the fully enlightened one who will teach us to reach that peace where our fantasies about how things exist are put to a final rest.
Yay, thank you. Janet 1.2, please.
I bow
I
down
bow.
Oops.
Janet, thank you.
I bow down to the one who taught us that things happen in dependence. Nothing ends and nothing begins. Nothing stops, but nothing ever lasts forever. Nothing comes and nothing goes. No two things are the same, nor are any two the same.
No, two things different. Okay, thank you. Who is next? Pauline 1.3.
Okay, teacher. Nothing grows from itself, nothing grows from something else, nothing grows from both, and nothing grows without a cause. There is nothing at all that grows at all.
Okay. So Mr. Kachik has said No, Arya Nagarjuna, the one who comes before has to have some nature, because it's like the one-way relationship of fire, which depends upon its fuel to be there. But the fuel for the fire can be there before the fire happens. So in this analogy, the fuel is the me that Mr. Kachik believes is there first. And then the fire is what depends upon me to happen. So, it's like, well, I kind of agree to that, right? I am here for me to be able to do stuff. For things to be able to happen to me, I have to be here. So Mr. Kachik says, see, in the same way that fire depends upon fuel to burn, but fuel is there whether there's fire or not, proves my point. And what's Arya Nagarjuna going to say? Let's check. If that's true, then the fuel really needs to be there independent of fire. And if it's there independent of fire, then fire must be something independent of it. And if that's true, there must be a moment they touch in time, or a moment they touch in place. Because if they don't make contact in some way, there can't be any relationship at all. So let's think about it. I have a demo. So we recognize this thing as a lighter, right? In modern world, this is what starts fire. We know that there's some kind of fuel inside this thing that what we mean by fuel is the stuff that can allow fire to be there. How do I say that? It's the stuff that fire needs to burn, because that's what fire does. Fire's hot and burning, but it needs something else to be hot and burning. So here's no flame, no fire, but fuel, because it's in there, I hope. Then something happens. Can you see? Fire. Now, oh, don't go away, don't go away, don't go away. Now watch. No fire. Right? Piece of incense. We'll call it the wood. Watch carefully. Oh, look. Oh. Oh. It looks on the screen like they're touching, but you know what? I'm 2 inches from it. I gotta watch. Watch really carefully. Oh, you can't see the fire anymore, but it's just barely there. There it goes. Got it? Now there's smoke. and no fire. Although technically still fire, right? It's just not flame, but it's still hot and burning, which you only know because you see the smoke. But anyway, so worldly wise, what just happened? The lighter made the spark. Technically, I made the lighter make the spark that sparked the fuel, that made the flame. And then that flame, I was able to bring this fuel close enough to that flame. They finally touched. And then the flame, I don't know, became, this
Translate.
became fuel and made fire here. And now the fire will be here until this piece of fuel is gone. And then the fire will be gone, right? So doesn't that mean the cause of this fire was the spark in the lighter? Because it was the spark that started the whole thing. But I can spark this thing and not get fire. So the sparking can't be the cause of the fire. Can it? No, not without the fuel. So the fuel is the cause of the fire. But then if that were true, there'd be fire anywhere there's fuel, right? So the fuel's not the fuel until it's burning. But the fire that's burning, that fuel's burnt and gone. Right? So whether you look at it from the fire side or from the fuel side, they can't be one-way relationship. They have to be mutually depending. But if they're mutually depending, meaning they both arise dependent upon the other, how can you have no fire, something happen, spark, and then fire? It has to be sequential. It can't be sequential. It has to be, right? We're stuck in this loop, like you get into the computer trying to get into your login. And you know, and Nagarjuna, he's laughing. He's saying, exactly, that's my point. Something else is going on here. Because we're showing ourselves it can't be linear and it can't be spontaneous, all of them at once either. And, you know, we know the punchline. Our seeds ripen. And it's like, oh, phew, we'll buy that. But I challenge us to really work that out too, because I know I'm thinking of it wrongly. And thinking, oh, you know, that's the solution. But how does a seed ripen in our mind to make this new image? Isn't that happening sequentially as well? Is it mutually dependent? Yeah, the mutual dependence comes out of a seed, but what about this whole seed thing? That can't be happening that way either. I hope Arya Nagarjuna is going to address it.
Lama,
Yes.
like that example that you just gave us, it occurs to me, like, for example, my clothes. right? That keep me warm. So my body needs heat to keep warm.
Mhm.
So it would be like, where do they touch as well, right?
Right.
To keep me warm.
Right.
So the analogy would be like me in the past, okay, had the possibility to help somebody else keep warm.
Mhm.
And those seeds are continuing ripening because of my past actions. I was able, or I don't know, to dress people, to give some warmth to them. And that has been perpetuating. And that's why I continue feeling warm with whatever I put on. Could that be the way we're going to?
That we're getting, that's explanation is our explanation. And we're wanting to understand that explanation from Arya Nagarjuna's level of wisdom,
Okay.
right? And yes, that's how we explain it. But
Okay.
I admit that as my mind was listening to the explanation, I'm thinking it's this linear thing happening. And it's useful and it, right? We can work with it. I'm not saying
Okay.
negate it, but we want to really get to a way of understanding those words that's underneath what we hear them to mean, right? And we're getting there, right? Because we can all hear your explanation and go, yeah, okay, I understand that. My behavior now creates my future. But do you hear the very words still say me, right? This me. And
Okay.
I'm not saying there's no me at all, but we're locked. We're locked into this. Me is there first. The me that
So,
gave clothes, right?
okay, so
Has
the
this
non-existent me would be, so I would have to substitute it to the non-existent me past then.
not non-existing, the dependently arising me.
Okay. Okay, I'll work with that word,
The
dependently
happening,
arising.
right? The happening.
Okay,
Mama Serrani, can I
The
also
way
ask?
I went with it was I would hyphenate, in my mind, I would hyphenate everything, me baking cake happening, me eating cake happening, so that it wasn't a me doing that, it was all one.
but you still say me.
I know you have to say me. I tried once in retreat for a while to go without the word, I, me, mine, even in my mind, right? Because we were in silence. And it was just like so impossible to do because your mind just is going, I need to go to the bathroom. Get rid of I, right? Need bathroom happening. Toilet going happening. Lunch eating happening. But it was useful to try to stop that automatic self-identity. Not non-existent. You don't disappear at all. But that
Yeah.
idea, same me that is doing stuff, or the same me that things are happening to, that changes. It sort of expands. If you think of your empty nature,
Mhm.
I like to get at it by way of imagining different beings looking at me. And then I put my mind space into the awareness of how each one is perceiving me differently. And then I go to, well, will the real Sarani please stand up? No. And this one tries to, but then I realize, no, I've never even seen my own face. And they're seeing my face. So will the real me stand up? And then it's like, and I try to hold that then as I need to go to the toilet. And it's like, and then I love
Could
that.
be
What is turning Mojang?
like present arising.
Yes, yes. Present arising, moment by moment by moment by moment. But then it's like, well, then the conundrum is, how is it that there's that consistency of this perspective? If really I'm this, all potentiality identity, how come all of a sudden I'm not, John or Barbara, or like, why is it? And yet that consistency of subject side is because the seed planting consistency of subject side, it's not going to go away.
They go so fast.
But yeah, it gets bigger.
So that's why we can't catch it, probably.
Right. It's so hard. Right. 65 per instant.
I know.
Yeah.
Yeah, but thank you,
Pauline,
dear
yes,
Lama.
ma'am. Pauline.
Teacher, earlier I have a thought, but now my thought keep zooming in and out. I don't know if I can still able to explain or investigate. No, just now I was thinking that we say that our karma, the karma we plant and the ripening of our karma is mutually dependent, right? And then we think if we say there is some self nature in the way that we plant and the way it ripens, then it should be sequential. Can we investigate in this way that from our experience, it is not sequential? Because we don't know when something ripens, we don't know when we plant it. And we also have this experience that when we plant it, we do something good, but something bad happens instantly. There is a time gap, right? So can we investigate in this way that there is something going on? It is mutually dependent, but it is not happening in the way we think. So
Right.
can we confirm from here that there is no self-nature in our planting of the seeds and the ripening? Can we investigate in this way?
Yes, you could investigate in that way. And when you come to the conclusion there's no self nature in the seed planting either, we actually show ourselves how seed planting in fact works.
Mm-hmm.
And then we'll be able to figure from there how it is that the 4 principles of karma are revealed. Right? It's because they have no self nature that it is true that a kind deed will bring a pleasant result. It's because of what you just said. And we can derive those ourselves by thinking in that way.
And teacher also mentioned, how do we know the correlation between the seed that we plant and the results we get? Is we have to look the other way around, basing on the result, right? Ripening of the seed, the result, to see that what have we planted in the past, right? That's how we correlate and link.
Right. The only way to know exactly is to be omniscient. But we can
agree.
Use the principles, right, to deduce, right, come to a logical perception of what we must have done before to cause this, which is only useful if our conclusion is, well, then I'm not going to do that again, or I'm going to do more of that to get this result. Right. To me, it's not so important to go, oh, I lied to my grandmother before, and that's why my kids are lying to me. It's more important to go, whoa, it's unpleasant to be lied to. So I'm going to be really, really careful with my speech. Because
Yeah, understand what you're saying, teacher. But our challenge is there is a time gap. So it's like we get disheartened because it's like it doesn't happen, even though we know the punchline and we know that we should plant a pleasant seed to get a pleasant result. But the fact that our experience is like otherwise because of the time gap is very disheartening.
Right. But see, that's because we're still habitually focused on the result
Oh, okay.
instead of
So,
focused on the planting.
okay,
And
okay.
when we're focused on the planting, the experience we're having, pleasant or unpleasant, becomes less
Impactful.
impactful than
Yeah, I guess you
what
can say.
what I'm gonna plant. And I'm enjoying the planting. The next thing that comes is another
Opportunity.
plant opportunity, right? Another plant opportunity, another plant opportunity. That's where the patience, practice, and joyous effort slide together, right? When we shift from, wow, results are bad, I can't get the results I want, state of mind, then every little thing annoys us. When our understanding shifts and we recognize all those annoyances are in fact burning off past ignorance, selfishness, whatever it was, and now I'm in plant mode, it doesn't really matter so much whether things are pleasant or unpleasant. I'm just planting seeds and I'm having fun planting the seeds I'm planting. So now our enjoyability, right, is just moment by moment. But if we're thinking, I'm planting this to get that, I didn't get that. I'm planting this to get that, I didn't get that yet. Right? We haven't shifted our wisdom yet. Yeah, we're using seeds, but we're using seeds, we haven't made that shift yet to the creator mode. I'm not saying I'm there all the time, but it's the patience practice and the joyous effort really kicks in when you've got this shift of attention of plant.
True.
Yeah.
Agree. Thank you, teacher.
Yes. Nadi.
Thank you. For me, from what I'm hearing, it needs to be that it's constantly coming to me that we should not be just confined with ourselves inside, but also it looks like everything else is also us, me.
Yes.
And then
What we.
And then if, like, example with the hand, if I'm just one of the fingers and everything else is the body, then me doing good for the other parts is also doing good for myself.
Right.
And then the omniscient part, if I switch the focus from being me, the finger, switch the focus on being me, the body, then I will know everything at once.
Yeah, that's nice. It's a nice analogy. I like thinking of it that way too. Like if I were
And then-
aware of every cell in my body and what it was doing, that would be like being omniscient. What it must be like for a Buddha.
Yes, just switching the focus from, and somehow we are confined by birth in this body to be able to focus only on this one finger representation
Yeah,
for that.
right.
And but then there is this holographic principle, right? In one little part of the hologram, you have the information of the entire hologram.
Yeah.
So it is possible to switch and to have, there is a potentially a possibility to do that.
Yes. And it will happen by way of seeds ripening. All right. Let's try on Arya Nagarjuna's chapter, shall we? Sorry, let me do this again. Oh, goodness, isn't working. Someone who's techie, tell me what I have to do with my second screen share to put it where you can see it.
Teacher, do you have a second screen?
Can you see it?
You see on the screen, but I'm not sure if you are showing the thing you want to show us.
Do you see Diamond Mountain University setting
Yes.
fire to your meditation?
Yes.
Can you see the whole thing? The whole page?
We see until the bottom is chapter 10 and analysis of fire and its plural, and then some Tibetan word.
Okay, all right, that's what I see too. All right then. Good enough. So Roxana shared that text from Jay Garland. And in going through it, I realized that I have that book. And so I got it out and was reading his introduction, which pointed out how different people who translate and interpret Arya Nagarjuna do so from their own point of view, right? And he was pointing out that he was trying to do it from the point of view of a higher middle way. He didn't use those words. He uses prasangika, madhyamika. And so it was like, okay, provided he means the same thing as we do by prasangika madhyamika, which I can't actually be sure, then at least we've got a text of someone, an academic, who's working on it from that perspective. And then Janet very skillfully compared some of the verses to Geshe Michael's and to the ones from Lama Christie that I've shared and pointed out some differences and some similarities it was helpful to show us that I think that we can work with his text as we're working with Lama Christie's so that we can I at least can get an idea of his terminology because it's different, of course, than what we're used to. And then by the time we finish Lama Christie's chapter 14, if we have not manifested a Geshe Michael in translation yet by then, we'll use Mr. Garfield's and go from there. But so what I then did was took the reading from Lama Christie's chapters and made a text out of it, different files that I'll send to you that we will use. And so I left the Sanskrit and the Tibetan in because Janet had said that she wants to see the Sanskrit and the Tibetan. So there it is, Janet. Special for you. This one says, an analysis of fire and its fuel. See how well I read Sanskrit? So this is Lama Christie's translation, not J. Garfield. I'm going to use Lama Christie's until we don't have it anymore. So we're talking about this apparently one-way relationship. Oh, it's time for a break. One-way relationship between fire and its fuel, meaning fire depends on fuel, but fuel does not depend on fire. Because Mr. Kachik says, me is the fuel for my deeds. And my deeds depend on me, the fuel. Arya Nagarjuna. And Arya Nagarjuna is going to say, right, proves my point. And we'll see how. So let's take a break. And then we'll dig in. So I'm going to let the recording go because I don't want to stop share to stop the recording. But if you listen to it, there'll just be a big gap. Thank you. Yes, Janet.
So I guess, you know, Tim he taught the Lam Rim with teaching Tibetan, and it was coming from the mixed nuts. And I sat in on the mixed nuts on Monday, and the people use tools to translate the Tibetan into English. And it's not Google Translate yet, though I think Google Translate's working on it. So there are these two other tools that they kind of use. You could just cut and paste the script in, and it gives you the word. But Michael Roche said two things. He said these Tibetan teachings, they kind of want to like do 2-for-1 sale. So they want to do two teachings in one. And then the other thing was the Tibetans like it when there's two meanings, when one has one meaning and then there's another meaning. And that's what the AI and these tools don't get. They don't have that kind of flavor that the Tibetans have. And I find all this completely exhausting, and it's making me want to take a nap, and it's only like 8 a.m. So
Sorry.
this is too much for me to do the translations and to swim through all that. But you know, it is the dependent origination, and I guess, you know, we're not doing this all on our own. There's like a whole teams of people that are translating texts and whatnot. And I mean, I guess I feel like I shouldn't worry about it. I should just worry about studying chapter 10 right now.
All right. Right. I like your conclusion.
Probably the best for me, because I'm not, you know, I'm not somebody that's got a lot of bandwidth and a lot of brain power, and all this is just taking a lot of energy out of me.
Yeah.
And so not my root lama, my lay lama said I should probably just focus on, you know, the ACI 18 courses and then what we're doing now. And that's enough for me.
Yeah.
And then the tools are available. The script isn't really the script. The script is also pasting it into these tools, and then you can have the translation. But then after you have the translation, you still have to, kind of understand that there's something else going on culturally with the way the Tibetan texts are written, and I think structurally too. And it's actually not that hard, but you just need to know about it and then be able to put it all together.
Right. Right. You know, I I learned long ago that for me to learn something new, I have to like totally immerse myself in that to the exclusion of everything else in order to learn. And then I have to use it to keep it. And when I was studying the ACI and further, I couldn't, that's what I was doing, totally, you know, focused on that and nothing else. And to learn Tibetan at the same time, I would have had to totally immerse in learning Tibetan and not the material. I couldn't do both. And so I just like set it aside, and it's like somebody else is going to learn the Tibetan. I'm going to focus on learning what the English words are. And I was so grateful that I had Geshe Michael and his translations, in the sense that before I met him, all of our Buddhism teachings were through the Tibetan lamas and then translated by someone. And it always felt like, something was missing in the translation. And then Geshe Michael shows up, who has the study and the realizations and the ability to translate. And it's like, perfect, I'm going to rely on his stuff. And it was helpful for me to find that connection. And then, his translations have unique vocabulary that if you followed along, that vocabulary has become my vocabulary, but it's not every group's vocabulary. And so in a sense, we're narrowing our ability to interact with other Buddhists, but in another sense, his vocabulary is so accessible. If you noticed Mr. Garland's and English, it's just tracked up a notch. I couldn't quite understand some of his things without looking in a dictionary. So you're absolutely right that for me, the translation, I've got to leave to others. I just can't do it.
Well, I've met other translators and they're like, well, you've got to have a sentence with a verb and an object, and they're looking for these sentence structures, and I don't naturally do that.
Yeah.
And so there's people who have like the gift of the gab and the gift of words too.
Mhm.
And they're, I think Utpala, the lady who does the
Yeah.
editing, she looks at it that way.
Yeah.
And as far as like immersion, they have immersion Tibetan here in Madison. You could take 2 weeks and just be in an environment where you're just doing Tibetan. But this stuff costs money and it takes up your time, and I have to wonder,
Right.
I was telling Roxana, just so I can learn enough Tibetan to go up to one of the Tibetan teachers at Deer Park and ask him questions about the problems I'm having at my job.
Right. That would be good Tibetan. Nice. All right. Are we back? I can only see some of you, but whoever's here, are we back? All right, then let's start into chapter 10. Again, try to hold that we're talking about the me, the doer of the deed, the fuel, and the firewood. Because we would have said in response to chapter 9, well, Arya Nagarjuna, if it's true that the doer and the deed are mutually depending, then they're the same thing. Me and the cake baking, cake done must all be the same thing if they arise at the same time. And here comes chapter 10. So Janet, you're at the top of my screen. Will you give us 10.1, please?
If the firewood was the fire, doer and deed would be the same. If fire was separate from the fuel, it could happen without the fuel.
Yeah. That seems absurd. But actually, let's go back. So if fire was separate from its fuel, there'd be fire there without the fuel. If I am separate from the deeds that I do, then the deeds could happen without me doing them. That doesn't feel as obvious as if fire is separate from its fuel, it could happen without the fuel. Our self that comes before is the fuel, the deeds we do is the fire. Can you bake a cake without you being there? No. Can you be there without baking a cake? Yes. Doesn't seem consistent. Let's see where he goes. LC 10.2, please.
Sorry, Lama. Thank you. It would be pointless to light this fire since it doesn't come from a cause. It would just stay there, always burning. And then it couldn't even burn.
Why is he saying the fire doesn't come from a cause?
I think teacher is taking that the fire and the fuel is separate.
Right. So if there's fire there without fuel, no need to light it. Because it would have to always be there. All right.
Dear Lama, but in a sense, it is there, right? It just needs the potential to ignite it. I mean,
Right, the potential. You said that word, it's the potential.
yes.
Which a potential means something could happen, but it hasn't happened yet.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, let's keep
But
that
it's
in
there.
mind. Well, something's there. Pauline.
Okay. Since it didn't depend on anything else, it would happen without a cause. And if it's already always burning, how absurd to try and light it.
Yeah, so pointing out that in the relationship between fire and its fuel, if they really are separate things from the fire side, it doesn't depend on the fuel. It's there without a cause. Fire, the nature of fire is hot and burning. So hot and burning would be happening independent of anything else. And then there's no reason that you need to light it because it's already there. Absurd, right? We're saying in our minds, this is absurd, Arya Nagarjuna. Fire depends on something. Natty, 10.4, please.
Thank you. Oh, sorry. Suppose you were to think to yourself, what's burning is the firewood. If indeed this is simply the case, what makes the firewood burn?
Okay, so now we've switched to looking at the relationship from the fuels side. So in the commentaries, they make clear that what they mean here by the word firewood is wood that is burning. You know, in English, we would say, oh, our winter's firewood is stacked by the shed. We're calling it firewood before it's actually on fire. And here, what they mean by firewood is not that stack of wood by the shed. It's the wood in the campfire that's already been lit. It's the burning happening, the stuff that's burning. So we were looking at if fire and its fuel are independent, then fire has to be burning all the time. And now we're saying if the fuel of the fuel is a separate thing, then what about it? So the fuel now is being called firewood. So we do think, right, what's burning is firewood, right? Imagine you're sitting around a campfire. The wood's been stacked, the starter, however we got it started, it's been done. The wood is burning, we have a nice campfire. So if it's true that the firewood is burning, what makes the firewood burn if it's a separate thing, that fire as a separate thing is acting upon? Does every wood that you put in a campfire become a campfire? No, you could put green wood, wet wood, and you'd never get it to light. What makes firewood burn? I went to 10.5 too soon. You've looked at it already. Let's go back and figure it out ourselves. So there's the wood in the camp, in the wood not burning yet. And you've got the stack of leaves underneath the pile of wood. You light the match. The match gets closer and closer to the pile of leaves. The leaves go up in flame. They're underneath the wood. The fire of the leaves contacts the wood, and the wood catches fire. And now we have a nice campfire, right? Sequentially. What does Arya Nagarjuna say? Where does the flame from the leaves touch the wood? Where did the flame from the match touch the leaves? When did the striking the match make the fire on the match? What's going on here? Who's up? Roxana, 10.5, please.
Thank you, dear Lama. Since they are two separate things, they couldn't ever touch. And if there is no contact, it couldn't even ever burn. If it never burned, it couldn't ever die. And if it never died, it would stay fixed like that forever. But they don't, he doesn't mean that they don't touch. It says that where does it touch, right? Exactly. Where does it touch?
Yeah, where does it touch?
Where can we pinpoint it? Exactly.
Shall I do it again? See it? Where does it touch? It did touch, look. It had to touch. in the moment that it touched, can't we split that moment? Well, there is a beginning of that moment that it touched and a middle of the moment that it touched and an ending of the moment that it touched, wasn't there?
There
So,
was.
okay, let's look at the beginning of the moment that it touched. There had to be a beginning of that beginning and a middle and an end. But it didn't touch. Did it
So
appear
the
to touch?
spheres.
Did it appear to touch? Yes. Does it appear to be burning? Yes. Does your mind think when it hears, did it appear to touch? Yes. That I'm just using words to pretend something? Because in fact, it really touched. Do you get how we're so stuck in language? Yes, it appears to really touch, and so it does.
But it's not only language, right?
Well,
It's our
it's
misunderstanding and our worldview. I
right.
mean,
It's our misunderstanding. And Arya Nagarjuna would say, and that proves my point, that we, right, our words can't, through our words, we can't get it right. And through our words, we can get it right someday. So if there's no contact between fire and fuel, and there is such a thing as fire, and fire is that which is hot and burning, then there would have to be hot and burning all by itself. And if there's fuel that is fuel by itself, then fuel would stay fuel forever. And then it couldn't be fuel for fire because fuel disappears. That's what happens to fuel to make fire. But if they are two separate things, that can never happen. If they're not two separate things, then they're the same thing. That's the wrong conclusion. They're mutually arising things. That stuff we call fuel for the fire is not fuel for the fire until it's burning. The fire is not burning until it has fuel to burn. The two arise together, but that doesn't make them the same thing. Mutually dependent. They rise together, but it doesn't make them the same thing. But what makes them arise together? Wouldn't we want to ask him that? Hopefully we're going to go there. Kong Li, do you have a comment or question, or do you have your hand raised to read?
Question.
Okay.
Okay.
Enlighten us, please.
Okay. My understanding, starting from the doer and the did, so this one, Nagarjuna, is it talking about the dependent originations? And then before this, he's trying to prove it is karma who does the thing. And then, I mean, the first few chapter, chapter 1 to 8, he want to prove it's karma. And then this one is he want to talk about the dependent originations.
Which is what is karma. So yes. Yes. Yes, he's talking about dependent origination.
Okay.
As the actual cause for things. Okay, so we didn't read 5. Let's read 5. Who's up? GL, would you read 5 for us, please?
Yes, thank you, teacher. Since there are two separate things, they couldn't ever touch. And if there is no contact, it couldn't ever burn. If it never burned, it couldn't ever die. And if it never die, it would stay fixed like that forever.
Which they don't, right?
Mhm.
So who's being absurd here? Arya Nagarjuna or Mr. Kachik? Nagarjuna is saying to Mr. Kachik, if you believe that there has to be a me there before the deed, that's like believing that there's fuel there before fire. And if you believe that fuel is there before fire, the ramification of that is that that fuel can never burn, in which case it's not fuel. Or it's fuel forever. And if fire is there all by itself without fuel, then fire doesn't need fuel. That's not what Kachik has said. Kachik says fire needs fuel, but fuel doesn't need fire. I am there before being a cake baker. To be a cake baker depends on other stuff, but the me there first is still there. And he's saying, well, but if that's true, then this would be the ramification. If it's true that fuel is there independent of fire, then they can't ever touch. It can't ever burn. So there'll be fuel there forever because it'll never be used up. And that would be then the same for our me.
But they're the opposite, right? Because they're functioning and changing things.
Right, right. So Arya Nagarjuna is pointing out the ramifications of our Mr. Kachik saying, no, fuel is there independent of fire. It's fire that's dependent upon fuel. If that's true, then this would have to be the case. That's Arya Nagarjuna. Okay. So it's not consistent with reality. The ramification of what Kachik has said, fire depends on fuel, but fuel doesn't depend on fire. The ramification of that belief is inconsistent with worldly experience. Fire and fuel gets used up. All right. All of a sudden comes this one. Who hasn't read yet? I don't see everybody on my screen. Somebody.
I can read. Teacher.
Yeah, Choi, thank you.
How does a woman touch a man, or a man ever touch a woman? It's because fire is different from fuel, that they can make contact.
The various commentators have said this is Mr. Kachik saying to Nagarjuna, Okay, I see what you mean about fire and fuel not really ever being able to touch. But come on, you can't still say that they don't exist at all, and you can't still say that they are one and the same thing, because come on, men and women, they touch each other, right? We know they touch each other in lots of different ways. And it's because they're different beings that they can touch. If we were one and the same, we can't touch another. It's because fire is different from fuel that they make contact. They have to be different, Arya Nagarjuna, just like people are different and so they can touch. It seems out of context, but it helps us remember that really the discussion about fire is dependent upon fuel, but fuel is not dependent upon fire, is because our response to chapter 9 was there has to be a me that comes before. Chapter 9 is what is it that comes before the deed done? I have to be there. Arya Nagarjuna's conclusion of chapter 9 is that one who comes before has no nature. And our ignorant mind hears that as saying there is no one that comes before. In a way, that there is no one that comes before is correct. In another way, it's incorrect. It's incorrect to mean no, none at all. Non-existent subject side is absurd. But the subject side we're even thinking of that came before, it's been used up like the fuel is used up by the fire. There's only the present moment subject side that's identified by what it's doing, what it's aware of. Even if you're sitting there not doing anything, you have awareness arising, right? So that we're even calling that awareness arising the deed, the doer of the deed. And we still think, no, I'm there and it's happening too. But when we are like shifting all of this is arising, the me doing is arising also. It is all arising. It is all mutually dependent arising, appearing as this sequence of me lighting the leaves to make the campfire. It appears to be sequential. And it's in fact all mutual dependence happening in an apparently sequential way. So not sequential, but only sequential, because that's how it's being ripened. Is that useful or not useful? Yes, Kong Li.
Never mind, I can read the next paragraph.
Oh, okay. Let's go to the next. All right.
10.11, 10.7. Consider the two of fire and fuel if each is defined by the other. Then even the fact that fire is something different than its fuel depends on the assertion that it interacts with the fuel.
Oh man, explain this one to me. Consider the two of fire and fuel. If each is defined by the other, then even the fact that fire is something different than its fuel depends on the assertion that it interacts with the fuel. Okay, so Kachika said fuel is there, and then fire is dependent upon it. Nagarjuna is saying, no, the two arise mutually arising. Which means fire depends on fuel and fuel depends on fire. So if each is defined by the other, meaning brought about by the other, so even the fact that fire is different than fuel depends on our understanding that fire requires fuel and that fuel is the source of fire. So that, we have to know that, not just know it, but be ripening that relationship between the two to even say that there's this thing fire and there's this thing fuel, says Arya Nagarjuna. So those who are still believing there's fuel and there's fire somehow independently still have this assertion that the two have some kind of connection between them. And that means that to know fuel is to know that it can light a fire, and to know fire is to know that it has to have fuel. So they still are mutually arising, even when you believe that they're separate things. Because you have to know one to know the other. You have to know their relationship in order to even talk about them in this way.
Dilema, sorry to interrupt, but I'm playing with the same example that you're just sharing with mind and matter. So mind would be fire and matter would be fuel, right?
In the sense that the mind is becoming aware of matter.
That's right, yes. They're dependent.
Yeah.
They're mutually
Yes.
dependent.
Okay. Mutually dependent. Right.
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 Yeah, I need a mind, right?
Right.
To see the cup.
Correct. More correct.
So it arises. I need something to arise, to label it, and to make an imprint.
Correct. Then that is the imprint.
That's right. That's the imprint.
Right.
So, because I was getting a little bit confused with fire and fuel. So I thought, think of it as mind and think of it as matter.
Right. Right.
So whatever arises, it's like the fuel.
Whatever arises.
Yeah, it's
is
the
the
matter. I mean, I have here index
fire.
cards, right? I
Right.
have so many other things that are arising here. I have a stapler.
Right.
So it's,
I think in terms of the analogy,
Mhm.
the mind would be the fuel, and all those things that are arising are the fire.
Okay.
Because we'd be saying, my mind is there first, and then these things of matter are arising because of my mind, right? Aware of them.
Okay, so if I think of it as my mind as a fuel, it's the potentiality of being so many fuels, different kinds of fuels, different types of fuels. Me?
Right, that would be Arya Nagarjuna's helping us get to that conclusion, that my mind is not a thing that's there waiting
Static.
for the material arising to happen, but rather it's this potentiality for the mutual arising that happens. Me holding cup happening, that has mind and has matter and has the interaction between, all arising together. This one, and then this one, and then this one, and then this one.
Right.
And our shift in perception from me having those experiences to experiencing.
Right.
Experiencing happening. Yeah.
Or imprinting is happening, right? Could be.
Yeah. Imprinting happening would be when we're aware of how this is how we're influencing influencing that process as we
Right.
interact. Right.
With complete awareness. I mean, with
Yeah.
conscious
If we were
awareness.
completely conscious awareness, we would be aware of the ripening happening and the replanting happening. You know, it'd be a great debate. Do those happen simultaneously, or is there an instant in between? I haven't sorted that one out yet myself. But yes,
Okay.
you're describing the conclusion Arya Nagarjuna is hoping we will get to.
Okay.
And his task is to help us recognize the still holding to a no, there's a me, there's a my mind that there is there first that's experiencing these things. And he's trying to point out that if that were true, then all these different verses about fire would have to be there all the time, fuel would have to never wear out, right? Our belief in our me, that things happen to, isn't consistent with experience. Right? Your explanation is more consistent with experience.
Right.
Yeah, good, nice. Yes,
Thank you,
Komli.
Deepa.
Yeah.
Teacher, talking about this one, to me, I have one picture coming up. It's like, someone is quarreling. If let's say initially one is grumbling and then the other one gives it back. So actually it's like eventually it ends up with quarrel. So it's something like if let's say one side, if let's say one person grumbling, then the other side won't give the feedback. So it won't turn into like, another thing.
Right.
Then so the picture coming up,
Right. It takes two to quarrel, right? This one can quarrel and this one can go, right? And then it never turns into a fight. Yeah, similar. Yeah, good. All right. Joanna.
10.8. So fire is something dependent on fuel, and fuel is that which depends on fire. If fire and fuel depend on each other, which one of them came first?
All right, which one comes first? Me or the cake baker? Me or the cake baking? Which comes first? Neither? Both? There is no first? There only appears to be a first. Which appears to come first? Me. Oh, appears just means not really. Right, not really, because there isn't really a me independent of whatever I'm experiencing, is there? Eesh, that still feels weird. There's no me independent of what I'm experiencing. It has to be, though. Are you ever not experiencing something? No. So why is it scary to say there's no me independent of experiencing? If we're never not experiencing something, it wouldn't be scary at all, would it? It's like, oh, now I'm this, and now I'm that, and now I'm this, and now I'm that. How would you go to, how would you be at work if your identity was now I'm this, and now I'm that, and now I'm this, and now I'm that? Could you function? It doesn't seem like it, but maybe that's the thing we should cook this week is how does an ever-changing you get through your day and do stuff? How would a not ever-changing you get through your day and do stuff? You would never get out of bed. So if fire and fuel depend upon each other, which one comes first? If our me, fuel, and our experience, fire, or what we're doing, our deed, depend upon each other, what makes it happen? Which comes first? Neither can come first. Right. Which is how it can happen at all. Right. $10.9, where are we here? Elsie.
Okay, Lama. If fire was something dependent on fuel, it would have to be there alongside the fire. And you would have fuel that's being burnt before there was ever a fire.
So meaning here that if there's a fuel that's, if
there's a
fire is a
that-
separate thing that depends upon fuel, then even when there's fire burning the fuel, the fire that was independent of the fuel would have to still be there. So you'd have these two fires. This is totally theoretical, right? Again, Arya Nagarjuna is saying, really think about what you believe is happening. when you think that there's fire that exists some independent way of a fire that is dependent on fuel. Fire as a separate thing that depends on fuel as a separate thing in order for fire to be burning fuel happening. Right? He's saying, even as we think we understand, we're probably holding to those two aspects, three actually, in a wrong way. I don't find this one quite so helpful. Anybody hear that? See this one differently than that? We wouldn't even say fire was dependent on fuel if we understood how they were mutually dependent, I think is what he's pointing out.
I think that he's trying to say that we can burn anything, right? Independently of the fire, I mean, independently of the fuel. Not necessarily the firewood.
Well, if fire was an independent thing, that would be true. We should be able to choose any kind of fuel to make fire, but water won't make fire. Concrete won't make fire. And really, in a sense, when we even say, okay, it's my seeds that make fire burn fuel. If it's my seeds, my karmic seeds ripening that make fire burn fuel, I should be able to make anything fire, right? I should be able to make fire burning fuel out of anything when we're thinking wrongly about karma. But we can't make fire burn out from water. We can't make fire burn from concrete. We can't choose what fuel makes fire or what fire comes from fuel. It is coming from us, but we can't choose it. And that the fact that we can't choose it does not negate the fact that it's coming from us. And yet we use that argument, and we don't use the argument, we think that ourselves. It's like, whoa, if everything's coming from me and my seeds, and if even my karma is coming from me, I should be able to choose what makes what. And they say, no, it doesn't work like that. And they say, because there are those laws of karma, and we have to work within the laws of karma, but the laws of karma are coming from us as well. And we go back to saying, well, why can't I choose the laws of karma? Right? I choose all my selfishness to bring me good results. And it's like, that doesn't work. Because it's not about choice. Choice of ripening. But it is about choice of behavior. So how does that work? Yeah, okay.
You mean choice of behavior?
How are we doing?
Yeah, actually, this one, I mean, everything is karma, but we cannot choose what we want is because things that we have planted before, only, I mean, we can only see what we have planted. And then the choice of behavior, it will depends, like, it will, I mean, it will, like, what will, if let's say what I'm doing right now will create the next moment. So this one is behavior means that what I'm doing right now then will become my next karma. I mean the next environment.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Right.
But being moral and being ethical, it impacts us. It's an impact in all of your areas of your life, not only, I mean, the behavior part. I mean, it's
Right. Right.
And-
And that, right, and so that ethics is we're training to grow our ethical awareness in everything we do, right? We tend to think, oh, we only have to call in our ethics, in those big moments. But really, it's a moment by moment awareness of my impact on others, because I understand it's creating the circumstances of our future, everybody's future, not just mine. And so that our level of morality is driven by our understanding about how what I'm aware of myself thinking, doing, saying towards others is what creates the circumstances of my own experience at some time, right? Not in the immediate next moment necessarily, but at some time. And so, again, all of these old beliefs of how this and that are separate, and when we interact and the interaction is unpleasant, I blame them. And when it's pleasant, I still blame them, right? I blame the apricot pie for the pleasure. And that's Arya Nagarjuna. We started there, right? No, it's not the pie that's bringing the pleasure. And so, right, all of these, we're getting a glimpse of our mistake. And when we take away the mistake and put on our understanding, thank goodness we have the understanding, we get a more clear understanding of what we mean by seeds planted, seeds ripening, that process. Yeah.
Lemma, I was telling Janet what it implies to be a listener,
Uh-huh.
right? So for example, for me to listen to you during the classes that we share together, it's so important because my mind sometimes is a little bit disruptive, and I just try to pull it back and to try again to listen, because I know the consequences of not listening, right? All that it implies, and to try to understand. But I guess that listening to Nagarjuna, right, and just trying to challenge ourselves in this understanding, it's planting the seeds for more wisdom.
Right. And that's a beautiful.
But listening, I mean,
Right.
listening.
Yeah. It's a
Not
beautiful
hearing, it's
perspective.
listening.
Right. His text is not telling us what is.
Right.
He's pointing out what's not. It's really skillful. And it leaves us confused and boggled and exhausted. And the effort is planting seeds to get to that direct experience of what's not. It really is brilliant. His text on wisdom never actually talks about emptiness. But we get there by struggling with it. That's a beautiful point, Roxana. Thank you. So we'll stop at 10.10 and dig back in. Actually, let me leave you with 10.10. If any dependent thing needed the depender to be there in order for it to depend upon it, but the depender also needed it, what could ever depend on what? So when you're thinking of you going through your day, can you be the process of depender and depended upon as you are doing what you do. Try to be in that mode of happening, doing happening, and feel how you shift according to the need of the moment. And how there's always an object, there's another that you are shape-shifting in relation to. And see if you can catch this nuance of seed planting and the pleasure of it. Okay. So remember that person we wanted to be able to help at the beginning of class? Simply struggling with these ideas is such a great goodness that that person will someday be helped in that deep and ultimate way. And that's an extraordinary goodness. So please be happy with yourself. And think of this goodness like a beautiful glowing gemstone that you can hold in your hand. Recall your own precious holy guide. See how happy they are with you. Throw your gratitude to them, your reliance upon them. Ask them to please stay close, to continue to inspire you and guide you. And then offer them this gemstone of goodness. See them accept it and bless it. And they carry it with them right back into your heart. See them there, feel them there. That love, that compassion, that wisdom. It feels so good, we want to keep it forever, and so we know to share it. By the power of the goodness that we've just done, may all beings complete the collection of merit and wisdom, and thus gain the two ultimate bodies that merit and wisdom make. So use those 3 long exhales to share this goodness with that one person. Just share it with everyone you love. To share it with every being you've ever seen or heard of. See them all filled with the happiness of being karmic planters. And may it be so.
Thank you for a beautiful class, dear Lama.
Thank you everyone for contributing.
Thank you.
See you next
I-
week.
I sent you a message, private message right now, Lama. Can you see it?
Okay. Thank you. No. In the
Yeah, here in the chat. Yeah, here.
no, I'm not. I don't see my chat.
Okay, I'll email you right now.
Okay.
Great day or good night. Love you.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye-bye.
Thank you. Please
Bye.
stay.
Bye-bye.
Stay well.
Bye-bye.
Yeah.